Welcome to the Karuna Life, a podcast dedicated to exploring the connection between spirituality and everyday life. I'm Gina Kitzmiller. I'm an intuitive, a Reiki master teacher, Akashic Records facilitator, and founder of Trimatri Reiki. As a longtime spiritual seeker, my goal is to help you navigate the complexities of the spiritual world, learn how to enhance your intuition, and lead a heart-centered life. Join me as we unravel the mysteries of energy work and metaphysical practices. We'll dive into high vibrational conversations with experts and personal storytellers and learn how to recognize and communicate with those in spirit. So get ready to embrace your inner mystic and explore the realms of the unseen. All right, welcome to the Karuna Life Podcast. I'm Gina Kitzmiller, and today I have a very special guest. I have Nora Kaukl with me today, and she is a shamanic practitioner, and we are going to discuss shamanism. And my hope for this podcast is to really help the listener understand shamanism and how some of the shamanic practices can be very helpful in everyday life. So, Nora, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So for the listener, Nora, to start, can you explain a little bit about what shamanism is? Because I know for a lot of people, they don't really understand what it is. So how would you explain it?
Sure. Shamanism is a spiritual practice during which a spiritual practitioner, often called a shaman, alters their consciousness in order to interact with the spirit world. They alter their consciousness through a trance, and this trance is referred to as a journey. The term shaman comes from the Tungus tribe in Siberia, and it means spiritual healer or one who sees in the dark. It's an ancient practice that dates back over 75,000 years, and there's evidence of it being practiced in various forms all over the world.
Yeah, it's a really deep and very ancient practice. I've been just, as I would say, a student of shamanism for the last several years. I've taken some classes, read books on it, and I still feel it's one of those things where I think initially I felt like I knew a lot. And then the further I got in, I realized I know very little at all about it. It's such a very vast and complex spiritual practice. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording. But I know that you don't call yourself a shaman. Can you explain why that is? Because so often we see people referring to themselves as shamans nowadays, I think on social media and for their professional work. So why is it you don't call yourself a shaman?
So there are some longstanding, deep set traditions where you have to earn the name shaman after, perhaps you've survived a series of traumatic events, or you have to train as an apprentice for a number of years under a shaman. I mean, those are some very deep, long-standing traditions that I want to have respect for. So that's why I call myself a shamanic practitioner.
That makes sense. And that was kind of my thought as well, because I think when I was newer learning about it, I thought, gosh, should I call myself a shaman? And then as I studied it and realized, I just thought, gosh, that feels like I'm taking something away and claiming something that to me, I feel like it's something that would be bestowed really in spirit so that you have received that mantle, so to speak, of either teacher or shaman or some of those things that it needs to be kind of given rather than like claimed, if that
Mm.
makes sense, especially for people who are doing it more of a marketing perspective, which unfortunately I think we tend to see a little bit nowadays. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't want, I just want to have the utmost respect for those traditions and not have people feel like I'm taking advantage of those.
So you mentioned a little bit about a shamanic journey, which I think is probably one of the more common ways that people hear shamanism. I know that I've used it in retreats. People from all religions practice shamanic journeys. So can you talk a little bit about what that is?
So, as I had mentioned before, journey is a type of trance. It's an altered state of consciousness. You can be guided through the journey by a practitioner, or it can be self guided. During the journey, you make contact with a spirit animal or a power animal who can then help you connect to the spirit world. The journey is usually accompanied by a drum or a rattle, and that regular percussive rhythm is meant to be a drone of sorts to help you focus into the journey. And different beat transitions will give you guidance to where you yourself need to make transitions in the journey. Journeys are not always purely linear experiences. They may be snapshots of information. They may be various combinations of our senses. Sometimes the messages you receive are they're purely feelings. And some valuable concepts to remember while journeying are to just let it flow, let it unfold, and in a way, surrender yourself to it. A barrier that I've seen with people newer to journey, and I've had issue with myself, is to get stuck in a very left brain way of thinking, during which we try to make sense of everything right away. But journey really works best when we allow our right brains to take over and allow those messages just to come. You can ask your spirit animal, what does this mean? And they can help you interpret it. Or you can write down what you experienced after you journey, and it will most likely make sense to you as you're writing it, or the meaning may come to fruition at a later point in time.
Now, because I've done this in group settings, and one I noticed there was one time we had a group of maybe 12, and there were two participants that were seated next to each other, and they both had like a distinct smell of like a specific flower in their journey, even though I hadn't cued that. That was something like they were, there's very little guidance given, at least in the way that I usually do shamanic journey, because you're letting people have their own experience, which can be hard for those of us that want to stay in that left brain of tell me what to do, go left, go right. But I found that really interesting that it was like, well, why would they both get something so similar when that hadn't been cued to them? And I'm just curious, have you found that as well?
Yeah, I believe that you can look at journey as a way of accessing that collective consciousness, that shared intelligence that we all have subconsciously. And perhaps maybe they were tapping into the same channel. And maybe them sitting right next to each other had something to do with it. That's very interesting. It's
I
very
know it did. It really struck me as interesting. And something
Mhm.
else I heard, I'm curious to get your thoughts on, was that I either read or heard recently that you really should be kind of cautious around interpreting someone else's journey. So that if there is a group, I notice that participants often out of a desire to help will say, like, let's say you said, I saw this beautiful white owl appear, and I want to say, oh gosh, Nora, that must be represent wisdom for you. And I want to like interpret your journey. And I've heard that it's actually better to refrain from putting an interpretation on it and to allow that person to allow the meaning for them to come through. Do you find that that's true?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I feel like it's the same like with tarot. Personally, that's how I read tarot. I think it can be helpful to like if the person, if like the seeker is having difficulty interpreting what they're seeing, I think it's initially good to start with, well, how do you feel when you see that white owl? Do you have certain memories of a white owl that makes you feel a certain way? If they're having difficulty making that connection, then maybe perhaps, you can give some just ideas of like what the white owl represents, like possibly what the archetype represents and so forth. But initially, you really want to encourage the seeker to explore their own intuition and their own feelings that arise from that symbol or from the message that they're receiving.
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you. That's helpful. So it sounds like you're going to give some like framework to allow the person to have some deeper experiences, or what does that mean to help guide them on how they might perceive that information, or allow their inner intuition to help guide them as to what is being asked or being shown to them.
Right, right. Because
Okay.
its journey is such a personal experience. It's such a personal experience.
That's one of the things that I love about it, is that each one is so unique and different. And I don't know how your experience is, but for myself, sometimes it's hard to kind of let go of that everyday world. And the drumbeat is very helpful for me to relax in and just allow things to happen. But I still struggle because I find I'm very visual. I want to just see in the journey. And it's hard to focus on what am I feeling, what am I smelling, all those other clairs, I would say, because I'm often such a visual person. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think journey, if doing, if anything, doing journey for a long time, like it teaches you a lot about patience. And it does help develop those other senses for you. It is because you start to learn how to listen to those other cues that you may be receiving.
So, why would someone choose to do a shamanic journey? So, let's say I'm new to shamanism. Why would I even want to do a shamanic journey? What are the benefits to someone?
Well, shamanism can be used. in a lot of different ways. You can use shamanism to solve problems. You can use it to heal yourself and others and to gain needed perspective. I mean, that's a very basic description of the uses of shamanism, but truly you can use it in so many ways. Some more specific examples of utilizing it are to like relive memories, to resolve past conflict that's impacting the present, or re experiencing times of happiness in your life just for the pure enjoyment of it. Through Journey, you can practice doing something that may scare you or make you nervous. Maybe you have an upcoming job interview. In your journey, you can visualize the interview going great. And then that practice may give you more confidence and ease on the day of the actual interview. Another example is maybe you're having communication barriers with a loved one. You can journey to talk with the soul of this loved one, to have an open conversation with them and to work through the conflict. This may alone give you peace, or you can bring that gained knowledge from the conversation to this reality to perhaps improve the breakdown in communication. Our possibilities really are endless, and shamanic journey is beautiful in its versatility.
I like that. I haven't thought about that. So you mentioned something about reliving memories. That's not a way that I've used it before. Can you describe how that would look?
Let's say you have like really great memories of, I don't know, like some past childhood experience. Maybe there's like a cat that you loved when you were a child and you really just miss that cat and you just want to spend time with it because it brought you a lot of joy and peace. You can then journey back to your childhood home and you can ask that cat to appear and then spend time with it. Just spend time with it. Again, just out of the pure joy and enjoyment of it. Maybe you have some guilt associated with that time or sadness associated with that time. And just being with that cat, it can be soothing and therapeutic. I know that sounds very simplistic and maybe some people think that it's trite, but actually it can be really quite fulfilling to do.
No, I think it sounds like it'd be very powerful.
Right, right,
I think that makes sense to me because when you were talking, I had Bailey, I had a lab that I just adored, was with me for, 14 years. And I was devastated when I lost him. And I knew he was with me in spirit, but I still miss that dog, and he just was such a special being to me. It makes me like tear up thinking about it. But
right.
I never thought about like journeying to like talk with him or maybe going back into a special memory that I have with him to almost kind of be present in that memory with him. Sounds very comforting to me as we're having this conversation.
Right, right. I'm bringing that up, and I was initially a little bit stunted in talking about it because it really ties it into some personal things that I'm going through right now. But I journey a lot to my childhood home, actually my safe place where it's like a starting point of your shamanic journey where you can always return to. It's a place that you're very familiar with. Ideally, it's a place in nature. So, like if you feel overwhelmed in your journey or scared, you could automatically go back to that safe space and feel grounded again and protected again. And my safe space is a huge sycamore that is on the property of the childhood home that I grew up at. Like the other day, I started off there and I was having some conflict in my current life. So I went back to my childhood home and sat by the tree. And I thought about this cat. Her name was Bats, and she just like popped up out of nowhere, and I just was thinking about her. And my spirit guide said, go down, pointed me down the creek, which was like was is connected to this giant tree that I start off at my home base. And so I went down to the creek, and at the end of the creek there was my cat, and I saw her, and I said, "Oh, Bats," and I gave her a big hug, and her death is actually associated with some guilt that I feel because the dog that I had brought home actually attacked the cat and killed her. And so I had a lot of guilt associated with that still. And I thought that I had kind of gotten over it, but when I saw her, it just kind of came back up. And I could feel from her energy, she was telling me like, it's okay. Like it's okay. It's not your fault. You didn't mean to. And I'm at peace. And we're still able to share this memory, our wonderful memories together through this plane that you create. And so what I thought was just going to be like a simple, like, oh, I'm going to go visit my cat. It actually turned into me resolving some past conflict that's carried over into the present day. And that's what that's a big thing that I love about Journey. Something that seems to be like so simple will actually turn into something profound that really helps me in my growth as a person.
I agree with that. I've had similar experiences. I journey often and there's nothing quote unquote happening, right? And then there'll be this shift and it's really magical when it happens and it'll suddenly take this much deeper turn that you were completely not expecting when you sat down to do a shamanic journey or a meditation. And I always find that's what brings me back to it are those moments where you're like, wow, I would have never thought that would have happened when I sat down for this practice. So it also made me think when my daughter a few years ago really wanted to get a second dog, and I was very hesitant. And so I was, kind of on the fence about it, and she'd been begging for a very long time. And so I started trying to connect in with the perfect dog to match with our family. And I was in a shamanic journey, and I'll never forget, I was just walking down a path, not thinking about anything really in this meditation. And I just happened to look down and I could make out this figure of like a little dog with like triangle ears, right? And that's all I could really pick up. But I just remember being like, there's a dog like at my feet. That's like so odd. And I knew it was somehow connected in with her. I think I tried to check in. I don't know that I got anything specific, but I just knew there was this presence there. And then a few weeks later, sure enough, we found this corgi puppy that's really what her heart wanted. His name's Max. And when they're puppies, their ears are folded down. So I didn't even really connect it. And then he was a little bit older, the ears popped up. And like, sure enough, they're these like very triangular shaped ears. And so I like to think that I kind of connected him with that little soul before he came to our family. And that was through a shamanic journey.
That's so cool. I love that. I love that.
So when we talk about shamanic journey, I think for a lot of people, they're very reluctant. And I hear people say all the time, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, right? I'm not intuitive enough. Or do you find that with students when you're teaching? And how do you kind of help them overcome that?
So I come from the viewpoint that we are all living this life. We all have a connection to spirit or the collective consciousness. And whether the ability to make those connections like dormant or not, whether we are aware of those connections or not, they are there. And we all have the right to access those channels of communication. It's my belief and my personal experience that anyone can learn how to journey with practice and most importantly, with an open mind. I think that there are some misconceptions that of shamanism that can sometimes be barriers for people who are new to it or wanting to understand it. And like what you're saying, one is that you have to be psychic to do it, or that
Mhm.
you have to be a firm believer in the spirit world to do it. You can approach it from a psychological perspective and use it in a more clinical way. And now I'm not a trained therapist by any means, but I have helped some people use it as a means of self exploration that they're more comfortable with. There are so, these are people who possess a more science based viewpoint and don't prefer that metaphysical concept. So I think that truly, no matter where you lie in the spectrum as far as your belief system, if you are more like scientifically minded or if you do believe in like spirit and want to connect with spirit, wherever you fall on that spectrum, shamanism can be accessible. And no matter how experienced you are, it can be accessible. It's truly just letting go and just trusting that the messages that you're receiving, whether or not they're from you yourself or from spirit, it doesn't matter. What you're receiving is an authentic message.
I like that. That's helpful. So it seems that more and more people are, I think, looking for answers in the world of spirits, whether that's a higher self, whether that's a spirit guide or a spirit animal. Can you talk a little bit about what spirit animals are and how someone determines or what is their spirit animal?
Well, power animals or spirit animals are helper spirits for us. They connect us to spirit. They guide us through the journey. They assist with the interpretation of messages. They protect us during the journey, and they teach us. Power animals are reflections of our own powers. Their traits are those which lie within ourselves. Power animals don't always have to be mammals. They can be reptiles, sea creatures, insects. Plants and trees can serve as power animals, quote unquote. I suppose you can call them spirit guides at that point, but terminology aside, any living creature can fill that role for you. Everyone has a primary power animal, and they almost always stay the same throughout your life. Their appearance may be different at various times, depending on what's going on in your life. For example, your power animal may be a buck with great large horns, but then it may appear to you with its horns shed, which can be reflective of a current change in your life or like a time of a fresh start. My own spirit animal makes herself known to me in various colors, sizes, based off of different transitions in my life. The bond between you and your power animal is unbreakable, and it's one of love. They're part of your soul. You and they are the same.
I haven't heard it explained that way. I think that that's really beautiful and that does resonate with me. And I also hadn't heard that you would have one primary that will remain with you. I feel like I've had, and I guess maybe they were messengers where I've had other, I would say, animal spirit come forward at certain times of my life for a while. And I still do occasionally. I see pandas, and that's usually a reminder to me to like be a little bit more playful, to stop being so serious. And in fact, when I moved, we were laughing because we moved into this home and out back there's a statue of a panda. And I was like, it just seemed very odd. But for me, it was almost a sign of like reassurance of you made the right decision in making the move and to remind myself to lighten up a little bit. So it sounds like now that you're saying that, that might have been just maybe more of a messenger as opposed to saying that panda is my primary power or spirit animal.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You'll have a multiple of different animal spirit guides throughout your life. And, sometimes they come and go, and sometimes they stay with you off and on throughout your whole life. But if you really lean into it, if you really ask, your primary spirit guide will come through for you.
Now I'm going to want to journey on this and ask that question. Okay, which one of you is the primary? Because I'm not sure. I'm sitting here. I kind of think I might know, but
Mhm,
I'm going to
mhm.
have to sit and journey on that. When we talk about the spirit world, you'll often hear in shamanism discussion of different levels. So, can you explain a little bit about the levels without I going into too much? I know because that would be probably could be a class on it in itself, but just for people so they have a little bit of an understanding.
So they're called the three worlds or the three kingdoms. They're the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world. The lower world is a world of past life energy and hidden or unconscious knowledge. You journey here to connect with the past, to resolve past trauma or inherited trauma. You journey here to commune with ancestors and to explore dreams. The middle world represents our current world or our current reality. Here you conduct journeys of remote viewing or astral projection. You come here to see current situations, relationships, and locations through the lens of a journey. The upper world is the realm of spirit, or the collective consciousness. Journeys here place you in contact with spirit guides, teachers, sentient spirits, deities, and celestial bodies. You may journey here to explore possibilities of the future. A handy representation of the three worlds is the Axis Mundi or the Tree of Life, which you see in many cultures. Simply think of a large tree. So the root system of the tree is the lower world, the ground and the trunk of the tree is the middle world, and the crown of the tree is the upper world.
I like that. That image is very helpful too. And I hadn't really thought about it in terms of the past, present, and future in the way you were describing that. So thank you for that because I'm going to tuck that little piece away. I haven't heard that before. So when we talk about shamanism and shamanic journey in particular, is there anything that you're like not supposed to do? Because I have heard that like once you do a journey, and if you go into find a world, let's say you climb that tree to kind of go into the upper world, you need to trace your steps back to your safe place for coming back into the present moment and into like the physical body.
I actually have not heard that idea of that concept that you have to retrace your steps back to your home base. I mean, I was taught to do that in the beginning, and I hadn't really been taught that it was like a hard and fast rule. But I do see the wisdom in it in the sense that you are regrounded before coming back to this reality. I could see where that would be very valuable to do that. I like that idea. But there are some times where I've been far and away from my home base in a journey, and I've just like popped out into this reality because either some big distraction happened at home or I just needed to get out of the journey for some reason. Maybe I saw something that was upsetting and I just kind of needed to get out. I think as long as you ground when you get back, you should be fine. But I really journey. I mean, my personal experience with journeying over the past 10 years is that there's nothing unsafe about journey. Of course, that doesn't mean you may not experience painful emotions or see frightening things. These are experiences, though, that are meant to help you. So, because they're meant to reveal situations for you to work through and resolve. It's all an aid in your growth as a person. And also, I think it's important to know that, like, during those uncomfortable, difficult moments, your power animal is there to protect you and comfort you. And you can ask them for help when you need it. So I mean, I guess those are really only the biggest rules that I would say that I think that are really important is just to remember that you're safe and that your power animal really is there as a guide and to just remember to use them as a resource. If there's something that you see that's scary or you don't understand.
So, how important is intention? Do you set an intention for every journey that you do, or do you set like just a kind of a blanket intention that anything that happens be for your highest good? So, you kind of cover that so you know. For me, I think that is probably something that internally say because I want to make sure that if something comes up that is uncomfortable, that I've already set that intention for that journey, that I know that there's a reason why this must be coming up then. And trusting that you are safe and you can, like you said, exit the journey at any time if something seems like it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Journey always seems to work best when you set an intention. I think setting an intention for, protection and safety in the beginning is a good idea. Most importantly, as a reminder to yourself, like, I can go back to the safe space if I need to, if I get uncomfortable, if there's something I just don't want to face at that time. And I think it's also really helpful to set an intention of what information you want, what you want the journey to be. It's been the same with like reading cards doing tarot, where you're not really sure exactly what you want, but you just want some guidance. You can set the intention of just general guidance, like, please show me something that I need to see. And then you would enter into your journey.
And how long would someone's shamanic journey be? I think initially when I first started practicing, I thought it had to be like an hour. And then it was hard, of course, to be like, well, where am I going to find that time to not be disturbed? I didn't want to get, jarred out of the meditation. So, and now as I've gotten older, mine I think are typically like maybe 15, 20 minutes tops. But is there something that you would recommend or a time frame for people who are starting out?
For my beginner classes that I teach people, they're really short journeys, about 10 minutes long. I think when you're first starting out, shorter journeys are better because you're just getting your feet wet with this new visualization technique that a lot of times you've never done before. And just because you really have to enter a frame of mind of patience and quietness initially, which, our modern world, like, we are go, go, go. And we are getting stimulated by all kinds of information, and our minds are going from one subject to the next, more rapidly throughout the day than I think past generations have. So I think when you're initially starting out, shorter journeys are better. Shorter journeys, maybe more often, seem to be more effective. And the way that I use journey now, like, a lot of times, like you, I'm doing shorter journeys during the day because, I mean, I'm a mom and I work full time, but I still want to journey. So maybe like a quick 10, 15-minute journey during a lunch break is what I need to do. But it doesn't make them less effective. They're actually quite effective. And the more you journey, the more you practice shamanism, you'll find that you're able to make contact with your power animal in more of a waking state. You don't always have to go into a focused journey to talk with your spirit animal. You'll be able to have conversations with them outside of journey. And I'm making it fit my life in the most effective, practical way that I can. And it just works. It just works. But there are times where you want a more focused journey and you may want a longer journey. There are times when you need that. You need that extra time and attention if it's something that really requires that extra focus.
I agree. That makes sense. And I agree that life is so busy. Sometimes that's all you can fit in. And I would rather kind of connect in and to have that 5 to 10 minutes than not to connect at all. Because I think, like with a lot of things, if you wait till you have an hour, for a lot of us, that it just gets further and further away. And I think that, especially in dealing with the world of spirit, the more you can connect in and you build that muscle and that communication, that relationship with spirit and with shamanism practices, things like that, that I feel like it's just easier than to access like very quickly rather than waiting. It's like not calling a friend for 3 months and then you're trying to kind of catch up on all the things that you've kind of missed rather than touching base and having that closer connection from more frequent, phone calls, so to speak. So when we talk about shamanism and people doing journeys, I know that Sandra Ingerman, who I have a lot of respect for, who's a very well-known shamanic teacher and practitioner, she has some of the drumming beats that you can find on Spotify. And I often use those with headphones on. That's really helpful for me. I do have a drum, but I really don't find for myself, I have a hard time staying connected if I'm trying to drum for myself at the same time. Do you have any comments for how people would have that drum beat? Because I think that's really helpful for a lot of people when we go into a journey.
The most practical that you can make it to fit your lifestyle, the better. So if it's much more convenient to use the drum track, like use a drum track, go on YouTube, go on Spotify, like what you're saying. I know those wonderful albums that Sandra Ingerman has on Spotify. I mean, I use those all the time too. There are even times where if like I am having a bad day and I'm just feeling really anxious and just really sometimes the drum, sometimes it's a little too much for me. So sometimes I'll listen to a recording of a singing bowl, like a 10-minute singing bowl track, and just lay down and let that guide me through the journey. I really come from a viewpoint of trusting. My guides have really helped me with this too, is learning to trust what's called, they say it a lot in the pagan world, is UPG, or unverified personal gnosis. It's information that I've received in journeys that can't be objectively proven or disproven. It's information or ideas that you won't find in textbooks about shamanism. Basically, my guides have helped me learn to trust that my intuition is authentic. So if something works for me, I just do it. I just do it. As long as I'm coming from a position of like respect and love and humility, I think that's what matters. And that's how I've been able to sustain shamanism as a practice in my life for so long. It's because I've just, like my journey, like accepting the messages that I receive in my journey, just letting them come and just going with the flow. I think that really ties in to just trusting that my path, it's it's okay being unique. I have a background where I just get very set in rules. I'm a rule follower by nature. So sometimes I get too stuck in the idea that something has to be evidence based and from a textbook and studied in order for it to be real and true. But more and more, I just started to realize that the information that I receive, my own perspective, that there is validity to it. And that again, like it's what sustained my practice for as long as it's been going. It, Shamanism has surprised me too with the awkwardness it can have and the strangeness and the humor that it has. I mean, you may see something that's absolutely ridiculous and makes you laugh out loud. It doesn't have to be very, serious and formal the whole time. There can be a lot of humor in it and a lot of laughter and joy and awkwardness and strangeness. it's all important stuff for you to experience for various reasons.
That's true. And you've given me a lot to think about in terms of different ways to continue to evolve my own practices and how it can be used. For someone who's a little bit newer to it, are there any recommendations for how they might learn more about shamanism?
So I learned a lot about shamanism from Sandra Ingerman and her books and her resources. I also learned a lot from the author Ted Andrews. He wrote the book Animals Speak. He has a lot of good exercises. I I learned a lot too just by forming my own groups and practicing with other people. Anyone who was willing to do it with me. I learned a lot just that way. I went out and I got my own drum and I just drummed for myself. And not everybody likes to drum for themselves or use a rattle for themselves. I personally found it very effective because it helped me build a real relationship with my drum. She's seen me through a lot of different transitions in my life, and the drum truly has become a guide and a protector itself during my journey.
I love that. But there's something about the rattle for me really takes me into that deep meditative space. I find that they're very clearing energetically. So I find it helps to clear any kind of thought forms or that energy around my head, but also to connect into my heart, connect in with that deep ancestral wisdom. For me, the rattle is just that's my go-to. That I think I have the same response you do to the drum where I feel very almost like sentimental towards it because when you have these deep experiences, I think there is kind of that relationship with those tools, or some would say even like the consciousness of that drum or the consciousness of that rattle that is helping you in some way. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that connection that you have with the rattle. I think that's a great descriptive of just whatever tool you're using, just what feels good. What feels good, what makes you feel confident, what makes you feel connected. Everyone has their different talents, and whatever tool works best for you, just go for it. Just use it.
And I've heard Sandra Ingerman says that if you don't have a rattle, that you can get a bottle of vitamins and use that, like the effect is still the same. And I like the simplicity of it. You don't have to go out and purchase something. You can just start with what you have, see if it resonates with you. And then if you're called, you might find something that's a really good fit for you. But there's numerous things out there. It could be the singing bowls, it could be different musical instruments that that people connect in with.
Mhm.
So I think that's really interesting. So tell us, I know that you have some upcoming offerings. So can you tell us a little bit about what those might look like?
So my practice is called Circular Journey, and you can find me on Instagram at circular_journey. I'm in the process of building my social media presence more, so I will be definitely posting more about where you'll be able to find me.
And can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you might be offering? I know you said that you were going to have a blog and then potentially some beginner classes, both online and in person. So can you tell us a little bit of what that might look like? I know you may not have it set in stone yet because this is kind of new and in development.
Sure. So I am going to be having some offerings beginning in May or June, later on in like the late spring, early summer. I will be offering beginner classes to teach people how to journey, and then subsequent classes to help newer people to journey learn how to develop their skills more so that they can become more confident practitioners themselves.
And I think that's really helpful. Because there's so much that when you can read a book, and I've read books on it, but sometimes that was hard for me to then put it into practice, where I found that classes in groups and online were more helpful because I was getting kind of like real time information from the teacher, and then I could put that into the practice. And it was almost giving it in little bite sized pieces, which was easier for me rather than trying to understand this very vast and complex thing of shamanic journey, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
And how long have you been teaching shamanic journey?
Almost 10 years now. I first discovered shamanism about 10 years ago. And it was such a game changer for me. It was a practice that was just so immediate and so effective for me. And then I loved it so much, I started encouraging my friends to get together with me to have like groups. And I started teaching my friends how to do it. We did it in person. And then throughout the pandemic, I did it through, online. Shamanism has helped me grow into a stronger person. And it's really brought me a lot of peace. I would like to help others learn how to practice shamanism and incorporate it into their daily life so that they could step into the most authentic versions of themselves.
I like that. And I find that a lot of the practices, what I like about shamanism is you can kind of like pick and choose, what feels right. I was just rereading one of my shamanic books from Sandra Ingerman, and she was talking about the importance of blessing and offering blessings to the world. And I thought, that's such a simple practice, and yet it's such a powerful one when you sit in that open heart space. And I've done a lot of different meditations and journeys for myself, and helped, I would hope that I have helped other people. And I think some of the more powerful things that I've done, though, have been in those quiet moments when I can open my heart in meditation and bless the tree that's on my property, right? And to connect in with that energy and to connect into like the nature beings and offer blessings to people in the world. I think can be really powerful and incredibly healing, not just for our own lives, but for our communities and for the world as a whole, which is obviously really needed right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think just the intention that you sent out there of love and connection, because I mean what we're experiencing through Journey, they're messages from the collective consciousness. They're all things that we all share together as a human race. And I believe that we're all in this together. And the love that you can give other people it can be such a powerful thing.
And I think a lot of people are looking for new ways of connecting with the world of spirit, with their intuition, with their higher self, whatever name you would like to give it. And I think some of the practices in shamanism are a really accessible way to do that so that people do feel more supported and more guided and more in alignment with their own inner knowing. And it's a wonderful, I think, gift that comes from shamanic practices.
I think that's beautifully put.
Thank you so much for being here, Nora. I know that we'll probably do another talk at some point because we have a lot of topics we could cover. Is there anything else you'd like to say about shamanism before we wrap up today?
Oh, just that it definitely changed my life for the better, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it. I love that, like what you're saying. It's such a versatile practice, and you can truly make it your own. And it really has taught me to trust myself, and that's such a valuable thing to have.
Yes. So, a question that I wanted to ask you is, are there any like misperceptions that you find around shamanism or shamanic practices?
Yes, one misperception is that it's a religion. It's not a religion. There's no dogma attached to it. You can have any religious background and approach it. You can be an atheist and participate in shamanism. Again, because you can simply just look at the technique of it being a visualization exercise of self-reflection, and can still be very effective in that way as well.
That makes sense. So, it sounds like the person can really adapt it to fit within the realm of what they feel comfortable with. And it's not pulling away or taking anything away from their religious beliefs or backgrounds.
Correct, correct. Another misconception is that shamanic journey is unsafe. In my 10 years of experience with Journey, it's always been safe. That does not mean that you may not experience painful emotions or see frightening things. These are experiences that are meant to help you. They're meant to reveal situations for you to work through and resolve. And it's all to aid in your growth as a person. And know that during those difficult moments, your power animal is there to protect you and to comfort you. And you can ask them to help you when you need it. And again, your spirit animal is there to protect you. But also, most importantly, know that those things that you're experiencing, they're more representations of, things in your life that you need to work through. like I said, I'm not a therapist, but I literally I love psychology, and I love how modern day, like Western therapy model of where you're not telling people what they need to do, you're guiding them to help them figure out the answer for themselves. And that's how I approach shamanism. I like to help people learn their own answers, find their own answers.
I really like how you worded that. And I appreciate that you're very much like I am, where I try to stay in my lane of like, I'm not a licensed counselor, but we do help people kind of with that self-exploration. And I think the key difference is that we don't diagnose, but we're simply helping to offer tools. There are many times that I tell people you need to follow up. If we go into something that I think needs more assistance or professional help, it's like you need to also continue that and go on and find a counselor. I have recommendations for counselors because sometimes people do get into somewhat, areas that where they do need a little bit more support.
I think
Yeah.
that's great. I think that's a really great thing that you said is to let people know, give recommendations for more clinical support if they need it and have
Mhm.
resources available.
Thank you, Nora, so much. This has been such a great conversation around shamanism, which is one of my favorite topics. And for those of you listening who might be curious, one of the questions that often comes up is that people will ask if shamanism is religious. And actually, it is not. Things like shamanic journey can be practiced by anyone of any religion. So if it's something that interests you, I would highly encourage you to check out Sandra Ingerman's work. You can certainly find plenty of resources online, or please check out Nora's work, and she'll be leading a group soon. So if you have any questions or comments, you can email me, Gina@thekarunalife.com. If there's an area that we didn't cover that you'd like to hear, please let me know. And as always, if you like this podcast, please consider leaving us 5 stars and following us. We would be really grateful. Thank you and have a wonderful day.